how do we properly identify that they are legitimate squatters, right? So it's asking them for leases, seeing if they ever had a lease, like what can we do to have full confidence? We buy a house, right? I mean, you buy a house from a seller who says, I don't know who these people are, kick them out, right? And we've had situations where they did know who they were and they were just lying, right? And so, like, how do you ensure? And then we've also had people tell us where you go and door knock and, yeah, man, I'm supposed to be here. I got a lease. Okay, where's the lease? Well, I can't find it, but I know there was a lease, and like they can't prove that they live there. So like, how do we dig in and properly identify this is a squatter that qualifies for this new?
Well, that's good. I mean, I think it's there's a lot of facts that people could bring to the table to prove they have the right to be there. The power bill in their name, the driver's license in their name, voter's registration card, credit card bill. I mean, the more ties they can establish to that property, the more likely it is that they were given permission at the very least to move in there to begin with. If they don't have any of that, the classic scenario, they went in, they got the lockbox code on the vacant for rent property and moved in there, and they've only been there for 30 days. They probably don't have a year's worth of mail. The challenge is in this kind of world we live in where everything I'm going to close cash and I'm going to close next week. Great. I love it. It keeps me busy. But the problem is that, I'm sorry about that. The problem is that you don't have a lot of time to go and knock on the door.
Yeah.
You don't have time to talk to these tenants that are there. You don't have time to ask them for all this information. Sometimes they give you a lease. Just because they give you a lease, and this is one of the things the statute does, and I don't want to tell you exactly what it is because it kind of shocked me. So presenting a fake lease is a first-degree misdemeanor. It's public punishable up to 1 year. Unlawful detaining and causing damages, second-degree felony, 15 years. Fraudulent sale or lease, put a property on, this is one of those ones where people sell the stuff and they don't own it, they're absentee owners, first-degree felony. It's a 30-year potential jail sentence. So it's hopefully, as that starts to trickle through the criminal community, they'll go, well, maybe that's not what I want to do. Maybe I should sell drugs and I won't get a first-degree felony, and if I steal the property, I'm going to go to jail for 30 years. So, but you don't have a lot of time when you're trying to close a deal in a week to really kind of kick the tires like that. And this kind of goes back to, and some of you guys might remember when the financial crisis occurred. In order to kick people out after a foreclosure, you had to establish that they were either the property owner or they were a tenant. And you had to advise the judge, hey, this is the property owner we're kicking out. You could kick them out quickly, the writ of possession based on the certificate of title. But if they were a tenant, they had various protections under the Protecting Tenants of Foreclosure Act, which there still is a version of that at the state level. And so my clients, well, I want to get them out. I just bought it. I said, well, you know anything about these people? Well, no. And it's hard, man. I don't want to go knock on doors either, but if you're in this business, that's what you have to do. You're going to knock on a door trying to find a seller to sell you the property.
I knocked on a door on the way here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as far as the safe bet, right? So is it just always with this new law, right, and trying to properly identify squatters and all this, is it always just safest to just go through the judicial process and get one of those, or do you think that would be being too scared of doing something wrong? Because you can always be extra cautious.
Everybody in this business has a certain level of risk tolerance. Some people are roll the dice, let's go with it. I'll accept bad title. I don't care. We'll sue our way out of it. Some people won't accept a code enforcement lien that you can negotiate for $1,500. If it's not clear at closing, you're not going to close. Some people are just completely risk averse. And so if you're a risk adverse person, your best bet is to hire a lawyer and follow one of these other procedures, Chapter 66, 82, or 83, whatever the facts are, and let it play itself out. If you have a judge that says they have to get out, you're fine. Obviously, right. If you lie on your pleadings or whatever, that could be a problem for you. But if you go this route here, this new statute, again, it's brand new, it hasn't even been in place yet, and we don't know. I suspect that the complaint that the JSO or St. Johns County Sheriff, whatever area you're at, the complaint is going to be almost exactly what the statute says. So it's pretty easy to read. I won't recite it for you, but it's pretty straightforward. You're gonna have the opportunity, but if you don't, the problem is if you really don't know that person's status, you don't know who they are, you're taking a little bit of a risk. And I can't tell you, again, this statute, in my opinion, was really for, you hear all these horror stories, that people went on vacation for 2 months and came home, there's somebody in their house, or they let some person visiting clean the house for them and the person wouldn't leave. That's what this is for. This is not necessarily for the leftover person that's in the house the day you bought it on a wholesale deal. In my opinion, that's really not what this is designed for. Yeah. Well, I mean, and look, and you may get down there and get them on, get on there. Hey, we're going to record you, sir. What do you got? Give me some information. And if they can't provide it, maybe you got them. But just realize if you actually use this process to throw out a person that's legitimately there, you're going to get sued. Yeah. They're going to find some lawyer that's going to sue you, and they're going to get damages for you. If the property gets broken when you're putting them on the street, suddenly they got to go find a new place. Is it really worth that to save $1,500 in a month? I'm not going to quote all the other lawyers in Jacksonville's fees, but it's anywhere from $750 to a couple grand to process one of these things through. The bigger issue is the time. Yeah. If you get bogged down in court and they file some pleadings that are suspect, you might be in there for 4 to 6, 8 weeks. And in the meantime, you've lost the opportunity to turn that property, get it rented, or whatever your plan is.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what I'm excited about, or what at least I hope, is that there is a new stigma going around for the criminals, right? Kind of like you were saying, right? And so I kind of just hope that just makes its way to them, and hey, people can just call the cops and call us and kick us out now, right? And is there something I thought I heard or read something about now the cop has to can take them to jail or something like that?
The cop has the authority and the ability. They always kind of have. If the cop during its questioning of the individual suspected they were committing some sort of crime, they have the authority. Now it gets a little more clear. But again, if you're going to interview somebody that's there and they say, hey, I got this lease. Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure you understand that if this lease is fraudulent, right, I'm going to turn it over to the sheriff's department, and you're now committing a first-degree misdemeanor, if whatever the case might be. Right. So, and you guys are most of y'all in this room are you're professional salespeople. So you can be persuasive if you need to be, and typically people understand what it means to submit a fraud. They know they're submitting a fraudulent document. There's obviously some innocent people out there, but even in this case here, if that innocent person legitimately accepted a lease from somebody that wasn't the owner, that's too bad. It's still an invalid lease, right? Yeah. And they probably can get ejected pursuant to this statute. And maybe what you do in that case there, there's lots of tears and there's children, and you could say, look, officer, we can give them an extra week or something. I don't know, depending on the facts. But in many cases, these people, they know their lease is fraudulent. The true squatters do. Yeah. Sometimes people do get suckered. I mean, we've all heard the horror stories, bless you, about that.
Yeah. So what exactly? Let's just get a good refresh, because I want to make sure that we all know what is in the new law, right? Okay. Yeah. So, because there are things the cop can now arrest these people, because that was also the thing is when you kick out a squatter, they just leave and go back on the street, and so that's what I'm hearing is good about this is now the people can be arrested and get thrown in jail, supposedly. Will it actually happen? I don't know, right? And I did an eviction, just to piggyback off of your comments on JSO. So I just got a writ of possession on a house about 2 weeks ago. And so I went out there with the cops, did the whole eviction thing. It got contested. So there's a house I bought in December, and they tried to contest it with the fraudulent stuff. So they were basically saying that everything that I had bought the house with was fraudulent. Proved that it wasn't fraudulent. Finally got the eviction 5 months later. And so, we're having this event going on. So I met the cops and I was like, hey, what do you guys think of the new law that's coming up, right? Like, what do you guys know about it? And they were just completely clueless. They were just like, we have no idea what's going to change, and we don't know what the difference is. And I can't tell you anything because we don't know anything. So that was kind of eye-opening for me to see, like, okay, they have no idea. Some people just have no idea what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going to be enforceable, what's not going to be enforceable. Are they going to take these people to jail or not? I was hoping the guy was like, yeah, I'm jacked. Like, I kick these people out every day. Like, I'm ready to take these people to jail. That's why I wanted to be a cop, back then. But yeah, so like, what is the exact law?
I think whether they go to jail or not depends on what they presented to the cop when the cop shows up. So let's say you go through the complaint process and you file let me go through the elements of the complaint you're going to file. It's pretty basic, but it's good to walk through it. The requesting person is the property owner, right, or an agent. The real property is a residential dwelling; doesn't apply to commercial. An unauthorized person has unlawfully entered and remains or continues to reside on the property. Pretty self-explanatory. The real property was not open to members of the public at the time of an unauthorized person entered. This is kind of a weird one there, because what if you put a lockbox on there and you had the lockbox code out there for the public to see, to look at your property? What does that mean?
Right.
I can see somebody arguing that, hey, I went there. I think one of our local real estate investment funds got stung where somebody went there, signed a lease. The guy had entered their property with the lockbox, acted like he was having an open house, signed a lease with this lady. She moved into their property and like, hey, we didn't sign the lease, and it was so. But that's a kind of a gray area. The property owner has directed the unauthorized person to leave the property. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you had to give them a written notice? Did you tell them in person? Certainly, things that are in writing are better. If you go to a property to tell somebody to leave, you probably want to have a witness with you. Just, if you're trying to check the box here, this is a gray area. This is in the statute that hasn't even been in effect until next week, so we don't know. The unauthorized person or persons are not current or former tenants pursuant to a written or oral agreement. This kind of gets to, how do you know that? If you didn't ask them, how would you know? Did you rely on your seller to tell you that? I mean, typically at a closing, sellers sign all sorts of affidavits under penalty of perjury where they confirm all sorts of wonderful things like these people don't have a right to be there, don't have a contract, but they could be lying as well. The unauthorized persons are not immediate family members of you. That's easy enough. You can pretty much confirm that. And there's no pending litigation. So if there's already an eviction action going on or ejectment action, you can't use the provisions of the statute. So, once you kind of get that going, the big issue here, this is from the Committee on Judiciary, it says that if the complaint shows you're entitled for relief, that's essentially the JSO blurbs there were basically right out of the statute. So you fill that complaint, you say all those things that says the sheriff must remove the unauthorized person. It doesn't say he must arrest them, must remove them. And, for the purpose of moving on with your business, all you really want them is to be removed. Now, getting them arrested may feel good, and it may be a good public policy thing, and it may get the bad guy off the street, but at the end of the day, do you really care? Just get out of my property, let me rehab the thing, let me get it back on the street, get it rented, get it sold, so you really don't care. But again, this statute, this House bill, provides these extra remedies in the back there we just talked about, and those there will be people arrested. So if somebody comes in and stops this process, so you fill out the complaint and he shows up and shows that police officer a lease or a deed, and it turns out that was fraudulent. they could be facing some pretty serious prison time. Now, I'm not a criminal lawyer. The problem that the police officers are going to have is intent. And I'm not sure if these are specific intent statutes. So typically, in a lot of crimes, you have to have the intent to commit it. So if you submitted this fraudulent lease, you're totally an innocent buyer. The lease is clearly fraudulent, but you didn't know it was fraudulent when you gave it to the police officer. Did you commit that crime? Probably not. You probably had to know it was fraudulent when you gave it. Like you created it at Office Depot earlier that day, or you and your buddy, your friend, the notary, created this document. But if you just literally got scammed yourself and you're the squatter, you're probably not going to jail for submitting that, or you shouldn't go to jail, in my opinion, for submitting that instrument. But if you knew it was fraudulent when you gave it to the police officer, there's some pretty serious penalties.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping that people go to jail because I just want the word to get out that people are going to jail for squatting. So I don't want to squat because I don't want to get arrested rather than just thrown back on the street.
Well, I think that if you could just get the police to start enforcing this statute on legitimate cases, so you don't have to go through this eviction process, and they're not laughing, it's going to take them a long time. I'm going to lay up here and then I'm going to file all kind of stuff with the court and drag this out. If they know that the police are going to actually enforce a property owner's or protect a property owner's rights to his property, that's going to deter a lot of these people. Because right now they're not suffering a lot of consequences, or at least the consequences are delayed. Yeah. Whether they go to jail or they just get kicked out, nothing's happening fast.
Right.
Look, anytime that you can get the government to help you collect your debt, whether it's or recover your property, you should. But that's not the tool. They're not there for that. But this is one example of you using the power of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in this case to help you recover your property. It's not really what they're there for, but in this particular case, because there's such egregious stuff going on out there, the law came down and said we got to help these people out. One example, all completely unrelated, but one example is if somebody, maybe you guys don't know this, but if somebody damages your property, let's say a guy wrecks his car in your front yard, damages your property, and you sue the guy, say you wrecked the fence and tore my property up. If they didn't have insurance, they don't pay for it, you can go to the DMV and they will take that guy's driver's license. That's a pretty powerful tool. When the DMV takes their driver's license, guess what? They're probably going to pay that debt. They're going to pay that. You might say, well, I'm not going to file suit. How am I ever going to collect this $3,000 fence bill from this guy who wrecked my fence? They're never going to pay. Well, I've had a couple situations like that, and I didn't really understand that statute was there, and my buddy kept calling me, and I can't believe you can't do anything. And well, it's a practice law. We learn something new every day. And I said, oh, well, there's a statute that might help this guy out. And so next thing you know, we're taking this guy's driver's license, and eventually my client got his $4 or $5 grand. It took a little while, and we worked a payment plan with the guy, which we would have done anyway, but he wouldn't call.
Right.
But he called the day that the DMV took his license. Yeah. So, yes, sir.
And that's something that you can just do yourself. You just take the judgment down to the DMV.
I believe, I don't think it takes. I mean, there's a little bit of I had to go through a learning curve to figure it out. I'd probably have to do that again if you called me tomorrow. So yeah, it's a DMV thing. It should be relative. I'm not going to say easy, but if you got the time, you can do it. And it involves, but it's got to be an automobile accident involving damage to personal property. I can't remember the verse, but that's essentially it. It would also apply, I guess, to if there was damage to your car or any kind of damage that was caused in a vehicle accident with somebody's underinsured or not insured, you can take their license. Pretty powerful. But again, not very many situations exist where the government is actually helping you collect your debt. In this case here, it's almost like a debt, right? Yeah.
So I'm going to ask one more question, then I'd love to open it up to the floor for any Q&A. So does it say anything in the law about, so you mentioned you go to the sheriff's office, you fill out everything, the sheriff goes out there, and the squatters are trying to prove and show that they do have the right to be there, right? Mm-hmm. Does it say anything about what happens next with that? Is that just up to the cop to be like, okay, I don't feel safe, or I feel like there's not enough evidence for me to go in? Like, does it say anything like that? Is it just,
It doesn't give any sort of guidance. It doesn't instruct the officer on what it is they need to do. They're relying on you.
got it?
So when you swear out your affidavit and you say, I swear this person has no business being there, has no valid lease agreement, no valid deed, I believe the way the statute's written, that they're supposed to take your word for it.
Got it.
And they are off the hook.
Right.
You're not, right? So when they go out there and they serve this, we'll call it a writ, and you put their stuff to the street and they go down and hire a lawyer and it turns out they did have a valid lease and they did have a valid deed, you're going to get sued.
Right.
Not the JSO,
Yeah.
because again, word shall is in that statute. Again, this is me speculating on a new law, but it says shall. So they can say, hey, the government told us that we shall do the following things when Gonzalo swears under oath that these people need to go. And we're relying on that. And if it turns out you're wrong, there's consequences. And that's the issue.